Welcome back. We are talking to Canadian healthcare refugee Shona Holmes, regaling us with the glories of Canadian healthcare and our future.
That's the sad part.
Wait, I think it... There we go. It's our healthcare future. Hey, I need to go to the doctor. Beating us up. All right, so, gentlemen, questions next. What do we got?
Well, when you say that you're a refugee, Shona, are you still in Canada, but you come across the border for healthcare, or are you mostly just a gadfly? Or are you here?
No, I am in Canada, and, the numbers of people that are going over the border are increasing every year. Last year, there was about 57,000 Canadians that came over, and that's really only the number the government knows about, because if you're smart, you don't tell them that you've been, because you get a lot of problems when you come back to try and deal with doctors again, when you try to get back into line. And, so, yes, I'm still here, and yes, I still use the American healthcare system whenever I have to. And I feel really bad every time that I say that sort of thing, because it's not that we don't have the talent. I mean, we have very, very talented doctors here, well-trained. Most of them have been trained in the U.S., but, they're very well-trained doctors. And two of the surgeons that worked on me when I had my brain surgery in the U.S. were Canadian doctors, actually. So, America's just got to wake up. Like, they've just got to understand that this is coming their way, and if people don't think single payer is looming in your future, I got news for you. It's coming.
I want to thank you for calling into the show and commenting. I had some friends who were up in Canada, and they had their toe cut off in some terrible accident. They went to the hospital to have their toe sewed back on, and they looked at them like, in America, if something's cut off, they try to put it back on and administer antibiotics and, eventually get feeling back, and there's a long rehab process. And they looked at them like they were from space.
Really?
Like they'd never heard of that.
Wow.
But when you talk to the high approval ratings for Medicaid and for these countries with socialized government-run healthcare, yeah, the approval ratings are very high for young people. Then you talk to the older folks who've been to the hospital multiple times, and the quality of care when people have actually gone through the system and gone to the doctor's office and they've been put on the long waiting lists under socialized single-payer systems. When you're forced to buy your medical insurance from the government, there's nowhere else you can go. Other people's approval rating is what keeps that monstrosity going. And it's not until you're older and you actually deal with the system that you realize that socialism just doesn't work.
Doesn't work. And the thing is the two demographics that are severely affected in our country are elderly people and premature babies. So many of our premature babies are born and put right in an ambulance and taken over the border. And if their parents don't have passports, that's my advice. Every baby shower I ever go to is I whisper, make sure you have passports. And I hate to be the one that sounds like I'm looming all this bad news all the time. I don't get invited very many places anymore. I think that's why. But, it's like, have a passport, because if your baby goes over the border and you can't go with it, but people don't believe that it happens, and it does. When we don't have the facilities to take care of the most vulnerable in your society, what kind of society are you? It is absolutely shocking.
That was one of the arguments that I used on Granite Rock when, the whole idea of Obamacare was stirring up, is that, example after example of the neonatal care that is just so common here, not just in the large research hospitals, but in most mid-sized hospitals and a lot of the really small ones as well. Just the little confinement area that they put a preemie in, for instance, that has all of the medical technology in it that you guys don't have, and that these little ones had to be schlepped across the border because, big city in Canada didn't have it. Little town over just across the border had it here in the States. It's like, what is it that we're going to do to ourselves? Where do we send our babies when that bulge in the snake that you're already going through starts coming through the U.S. system?
Exactly. And, I was watching a program the other day, and a commercial came on for medical tourism in Dubai, and it was an American station, and I thought, whoa, here it comes. And they're advertising Dubai is the place to go. Dubai is the place to come for your medical health care. And it's like, here it comes, because where will you send your babies or your parents or, yourself? You just have no idea how, and really, let's be realistic, how affectionate is the rest of the world towards America and helping them out with their problems.
They'll take the money.
Yeah, but they all stand back and wait for you to take care of them. But, would you really want to rely on them to be able to take care of you? And I just don't believe Americans will stand for it.
Do you have any help? Is there any movement? Obviously, you're saying you don't get invited to a lot of places because, I understand. Trust me, I have family members of my children's friends who haven't invited me over because they know who I am.
Yeah.
So, I get that. But is there any? I know you don't think anything's going to really change, but is there a movement at all that's trying to do something?
Like I said, I'm obviously being the constitutional challenger. We do try to get that movement, but there's such a pushback. And again, I listened to your last segment. You're talking about unions and whatnot, and that's really who we push against here. Because they're motivated in order to keep the system the way it is. The nurses union, the different unions, that sort of thing. They want to keep their jobs and they want to keep them the way they are. And when money gets put into hospitals, that's really where all the money goes. It never is patient directed, So no, there isn't a massive. It's definitely changing since I spoke out 10 years ago. It certainly is changing. The movement now is, the paper every single week. There was a young girl last week who was waiting for a bone marrow transplant, and she got a perfect match, absolute perfect match. And you can imagine how elated the family is. There's no hospital bed to put her in. So here she has a match, and there's nowhere to go. Now, I can't even tell you the language that spews out my mouth when I read this thing. I just scream, because it's like, how can we do this? Is there no moral, ethics involved here? Is nobody saying, look, we have to help this girl? But there just isn't that, because you are just up against a bureaucratic system. And that's the thing about bureaucrats. You can never put a face to them. You never know who actually is making these rules. No, just against the rules. Computer says no. And what do? Who do you fight? Where do you, And Canadians are so passive.
You bring up an important...
Except for hockey.
Except for hockey. Yeah, we get a little aggressive there, but I think it's all our frustrations coming out.
That's a great point you just made, Shona, that when something goes wrong, or if it just, or the better case, it just doesn't go quite right, who do you complain to? Because the connection between you, who should be paying for the service, and the person who is being paid to provide the service is cut with a single-payer system. Right. You don't have to care. And that's the worst part of the single-payer system. Nobody has to care. Unlike the free capitalist marketplace system, where if I'm paying and I'm buying your service, you'd really better care, or I'm going to go somewhere else. You're locked in. And yet all of these people who complain about capitalism, they know at the very top they can go somewhere else. There were several stories of your high-level politicians coming here for care because the Canadian system couldn't respond. Well, they had the bucks to be able to move. Well, what about the poor schlub?
Yeah, and this is the thing, and I'll even get a lot of blowback about that as well, because Canadians will say to me, well, at least you're fortunate enough to be able to afford to do that. And what this all boils down to, my husband's the hero in this story. What it all boils down to, he's the one that's working 2 jobs. He's the one that put a second mortgage on our house. He works for our local police department, so the economic status that we're in. So it's not that we had it, and we have health insurance, and I'm even blessed to have supplementary health insurance. I have a private health insurance that covers my dental and my drugs and eyeglasses and all that through the police station. But, so many Canadians don't have that, but what, you're off work for 3 years because you can't, walk the beat in the police department because you have, a bunion. I know a fellow that's exactly what happened. I mean, what does a reasonable person do? How long do you wait? And this is the thing. And then you write your local congressperson and you say, listen, and you get the standard letter back saying, unfortunately, we don't look at individual cases. Well, you're not looking at the big picture either. So what are you doing?
Okay, we've got about a minute.
On that note.
I got about a minute. Well, go ahead real quick.
I just ask people when I go door to door. Once in a great while, I meet someone who still believes in socialized healthcare, and I ask them, do you believe that life and death medical decisions for you and your family should be made for you by bureaucrats and politicians who you never see and will never care if you live or die?
That's
and
it.
they said?
Yeah.
And they say, well, no.
Yes.
And that's when they kind of wake up and they realize what it is, the false bill of goods that they're being sold.
I liked your car repair shop analogy. That was really good. I'm going to use that. All right, so we got about 45 seconds left. Can anybody reach out to you, help you out in any way?
Well, I mean, ShonaHomes.com is my website, and if people have any questions, or that by all means, and just giving me a venue like this to talk to my neighbors and letting them know what is going on, because I still want a great place to come and get my medical care. So if I can't fix things in Canada, God darn it, I'm going to fix them in America.
Well,
so,
we appreciate the help.
I appreciate you letting me have a voice. So.
All right. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show. You have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Okay, you too. Thank you.
All righty. Bye-bye. All right. That was Shona Holmes, Canadian refugee. You heard the story. Listen to it again, and we had her on in April. It's kind of the same thing. It's rough when you got nowhere to go because you got to wait 2 years for a procedure. All right. This is Grok Talk. I'm Steve McDonald here with Skip Murphy, Mike Rogers, and Max Abramson and Rich Gerard's in the room. We'll be right back.